Hey guys, Veebat here with another V Plays, and we're looking at the NC-1070, an aircraft I honestly never thought I'd actually have in my hangar, but huge shout out goes out to Legion71 who donated this aircraft and asked if I would do a video on it. Never expected that to actually happen, but I do appreciate it, and here we are taking a look at it. I have been grinding on this aircraft all night, trying to kind of figure out what the right combination is here to make this aircraft work effectively. And in a lot of ways I find a lot of similarities to the ME-329, the German ground attackers that have reasonable speed maneuverability, and they lack air-to-ground ordnance but have very substantial guns and a decent tail gunner. But this airframe is going to be right down the middle when it comes to a comparison between the IL series and the Messerschmitt series, because you get a lot of air-to-ground ordnance, you have a lot more hit points than an ME-329, and you have more airspeed than the IL-20 at this tier. You can see here we're able to get a lot of damage out, much like what you would see with a 329, where you can break up a lot of the structures, but you just don't have enough to get through some of those hardened structures. But you have a total of 8 100-kilogram bombs that are doing 2,800 damage per bomb. So the internal capacity of this aircraft is going to have more than double the damage for ordnance than what you would see with the 329, because the 329 only gets two 250-kilogram bombs for a total of 10,000 damage, while this aircraft is going to be over 24,000 for a non-demolition expert pilot. With demolition expert, it skyrockets. So we're going to go ahead and head into this missile facility. Normally I would go for a military facility over anything else with a ground attacker, but because this aircraft struggles to be able to hold its own because it has such lackluster forward firepower, that I wanted to go and grab that one garrison right away so we could start getting the capture points rolling. I also am taking out the air defense sites because I see that my buddy in the NC-1070, albeit a bot, was on low health, and I didn't want to have a bunch of capture points undone because he died in the zone. So by taking out the low altitude anti-aircraft artillery, we're able to give that guy a little bit more protection. We still have half of our bomb load. We're going to go ahead and head towards the middle. The reload time is fairly significant at 120 seconds for this aircraft, and with the speed you're going to make it to the next zone before those are reloaded. So if you ever find yourself completely bare on air-to-ground ammunition, it's usually in your best interest to loiter a little bit and not be in a hurry until you at least have some air-to-ground ordnance, because once you got air-to-ground ordnance, you actually want to get that out of the aircraft right away. And much like the 329, you can see that we are kicking those guns up and taking a few pot shots at some airborne targets, and this does do fairly well at countering other ground attackers. Managed to take this center site. Now I'm going to roll on through to the command center, because the command center is going to be the next offensive site, and I want to kind of prevent the next series of bombers coming in. But we can already see that the military facility is getting taken, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. I'm flying very low here because I want to keep myself masked from the enemy so they don't vector in on this aircraft, because while I do have a pretty substantial tail gunner, I want to reserve some of that health so that way I can use it to defend myself against the anti-aircraft fire, or sustain my aircraft long enough that I can get the tail gunner to kill some of those defensive aircraft to help flip the zone, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to flip zones. Didn't need to drop any bombs there. We do have some bombers overhead that are augmenting a lot of the damage down here, which is going to be helpful because we are able to kind of pick things apart down here, and then those bombers are doing a lot of work up top. We're dropping all 4 bombs here because we want to ensure that we get this portion of the site, and all we really need to do is take out this AA site. There's a little piece of it, and I note that I'm hitting the top of that one structure, and we managed to get rid of that last site, and now I'm gonna head out of the area. We do have a fighter heading our way. try to get a few rounds on target here. Unfortunately, only one hits, but here's our tail gunner, and the tail gunner is very significant with 208 damage per second. It's actually out damaging an ME329, and it's out damaging it by a pretty decent margin of 64 damage per second. That's how much more we're getting than a 329, and a 329 is really good at doing that tag and drag tactic I've mentioned before when I reviewed that airframe. When you're just beelining it away from the enemy, you're letting those air defense fighters chase you, and you let the tail gunner do all the work. We are going up against an IL-40 because we are significantly out-tiered right now, and he can flip a zone fairly easily with that airframe. The IL-40 is very robust. You start becoming a lot faster, and you still have a very significant air-to-ground ordnance. We're going to kick the guns up here for a second, and we're going to take out the NC-1070, the enemy one that is heading towards our garrison, to try and give our team a little bit of time. And yeah, we stalled out, but here's an interesting thing with this aircraft. It actually has the lowest stall speed of any ground attacker at this tier, so we can get this aircraft down to about 80 miles an hour and keep it airborne. For a lot of people, that doesn't seem very significant. You're like, what's the point of having a low stall speed? But if you've ever been in a ground attacker and you want to keep guns on target, usually throw on the air brakes and slow yourself down so you can maximize the amount of time that you can get guns on target. So here we are slowing the aircraft down, getting those guns on target, and we're able to stay on them much longer. We're actually going to kick the throttle way down here as we're taking on this heavy structure and trying to flip it. We did get our air-to-ground munitions back, so we're going to drop 4 here, and then we'll drop a few on this site, and we'll double back around and get those guns on to finish off what's left. Looks like the zone finished getting flipped. We're going to hop into our tail gunner here. Oh, this looks nasty. That is a 1092, and 1092 is a very vicious aircraft with some very significant guns on it. We're going to try and get a few pot shots on him if we can, but by going slow, he overshot us, which is going to be helpful for us. He just took out our NC-1070, unfortunately. We're going to get a few rounds on here. Maybe we can cripple him a little bit. There we go. We knocked out something. We made the good noise that we'd like to hear. We're getting that tail gunner on target, and you can just see how much damage it's able to kick out in a very short period of time. So this aircraft does have a very strong capability to defend itself, and if you were to spec for a defensive build, this aircraft could definitely keep the enemy at bay for a significant period of time. We see the IL-40 here. This is going to be white generation. Not quite sure what that means, but we're getting those guns on target, and these guns, with the exception of being 10 less damage per second per gun, these are going to behave exactly like the German tier 10 ground attacker's guns. You can even note that it has a very similar rate of fire and sound. We took out that enemy ground attacker, and I make a bit of a mistake here because what I do is I immediately start heading for that garrison. Where I probably should have headed was the command center. If I went to the command center, I would have had the opportunity to then go after the garrison up to the north, and the military facilities already capturing that garrison. So if I were to just leave, the military facility would be able to finish this off, and I don't need to worry about this zone getting flipped by the IL-40 anymore because the IL-40 is no longer here. So we are heading to the wrong zone, but I think I realized that mistake, but I was kind of pot committed at this point. I had already put so much effort into coming this way that I wasn't going to have time anyways at this point, and now I'm just going to have to beeline it through here and try and get this zone as quickly as possible. We are low on hit points, so we're going to try and capture this as fast as possible. If that involves dropping bombs, so be it. We drop 2 there, and I'm going to drop 4 on this site. Oh, was that just 3? Maybe just 3. And that should be enough to flip the zone. We got Flying Vanguard and the Efimov medal because we didn't die. And we got 400 capture points through attacking ground targets and Hero of the Sky badge. We also got Flying Exterminator badge, and we did fairly well for this match. And this is the first time I actually got grade 1 in this aircraft. I think it was the 6th or 7th time I flew this aircraft, but it turned out pretty well. We do have the edge on the enemy for how much aircraft they have left, and I know that this is the player that's flying here in the F2G, so I would love to be able to take him out, but we just don't have the thrust to be able to keep the aircraft up there. And these guns, while they're good at going after a ground attacker that's just sitting in front of you, they don't behave really well trying to dogfight at longer ranges. So we ended up losing our airspeed and kind of flopping out of the sky, but we racked up a pretty decent score. So let's go to the hangar and take a closer look at what the score actually was and what we did in order to achieve it. Alright, so we racked up a pretty decent score here despite this being a loss, and we made 188,000 credits. We placed first on the team, and we definitely carried our weight, but unfortunately it looks like the odds weren't in our favor here despite the amount of work that we ended up doing. We did 62,000 damage to ground targets, and we took out 13 sites as well as taking out 2 aircraft, and we captured 5 sectors with 420 capture points received. And we didn't die until, well, we didn't die at all. In fact, I thought we were going to die several times there, but we didn't. So from here, I realized that this isn't going so well. I'm not getting the wins that I want. Like, I'm having good games, or when I win, I'm in second place, and I'm like, I think I'm starting to figure it out. But Legion popped on, the guy who gifted the aircraft, and I go, you know what? Let me invite you to a flight. And this was the result. So we're going to get into another battle. This is the first time I think I'm doing a double battle, and hopefully you guys enjoy this one as well. Relatively quick match, but I think it shows the power of what happens when you use this aircraft in pairs. Normally a flight gets a lot of strength already added to it through the cooperation of the 2 players, but the NC-1070 is a nasty force when you have both of them shooting their tail gunners at you. So let's go ahead and take a look at that battle real quick. Alright, so here we are in the match with Legion _71, and the first thing I notice that the enemy has an IL-20, and then they have a player in an F4U4 Corsair. I already know, this is the second match we played together, that the first one we air supremacied so quick the match ended, and it just wasn't enough time for us to get any decent point scores out of it. So I said, you know what, let's do something a little bit different. If we let them get the command center, then those bomber flights will theoretically be able to fly across the map and take out some of our sites, and then we'll have another site to go capture. That's a tactic that I've used in the past, where you let the enemy capture sites, and then as a ground attacker or a bomber, it actually works out in your favor, because just flipping, the act of flipping a zone is where you get all your points from. But if you already have a majority of the zones or air supremacy, it actually makes your job much more difficult. So Legion 71 went after some of the air defense sites. That's not a bad tactic. I prefer to go after these main structures as soon as I can, because if you can take out these main structures, these are the ones that are going to be worth the most points and the best use of your air-to-ground ordnance. Now we're going after this 10 site. The nice thing about a 10 site is with a 10 site, I don't need to drop a bomb. The guns are enough to take them out, because these are actually considered light sites or light targets, and light targets are easy for a main gun to take out. But a hardened ground site like those 3 long structures on that first section of ground targets we were taking out, that's going to be a little bit trickier. Speaking of tricky ground targets, the mining facility, most of the buildings in a site are actually going to be hardened structures or armored targets. So unless I can light them on fire with my cannons, I'm going to have to put a lot of rounds into them, or I can drop a bomb. Now, unlike the 329 that can only drop 2 bombs, we have a total of 8. Well, right now it's only 7. I'm not sure how many Legion has on him right now, but if he has any, we're doing pretty good. Being opportunistic and finishing off targets is also valuable, because that was an enemy bomber that just flew overhead and destroyed most of this middle structure, this middle site. And if you take out the whole middle site, it's worth more than half of the capture points you need. Now, I initially go, you know what, let's head for the garrison, and I go, no, you know what, let's not head there. Let's let them capture that, because it looks like they're not going to be capturing the command center, so let's give them a little bit of a chance here to get a site. So I give myself I negative my own request to go to that site and indicate that I want to go towards the airfield. And then I indicate by clicking on the map in order to give it more visual cue for it. And that's how I like to communicate with my teammates, flighting or otherwise. We are not in comms with one another, otherwise I would have recorded that. But we're just going to head through the airfield and go to the command center. Now, the nice thing is that these aircraft do fairly well at being able to go after air targets, like I mentioned before, unlike with a poor example being the end of last match. But I see that there's going to be that ground attacker player control coming into the zone. So I indicate him using the F4 button, and now we both are going after this aircraft. He probably doesn't even realize we're heading right at him. We get a few rounds on target. I've crippled his engine. Now he's kind of a sitting duck. He's already a relatively slow aircraft, and while he may have a decent tail gunner, the combined firepower of both of our guns is going to be very devastating, because we're essentially the same firepower as a tier 10 ground attacker with our forces combined. Now we do have that Key 94-2 is chasing me and Legion, but look at that tail gunner. That's a lot of damage coming out all at once, and it's absolutely wrecking that aircraft, and I wasn't even the one to kill him there. We're going to head back around, and I'm like, alright, well, we've already got everything else, might as well head for the command center. It seems to be flipping around quite a bit. Maybe there'll be a good fight in that general direction. So I indicate going to that side of the map. We do have a few aircraft behind me, and as you can see, the tail gunner's arc of fire is quite significant. In fact, it's 10 degrees greater than the ME-329. Again, I keep comparing it to that airframe, but you definitely can't say this is anything like flying in an IL-20, because an IL-20 has massive, very strong guns with a ton of air-to-ground ordnance. Well, this is in a similar boat as the 329 with relatively limited guns, because, I mean, the huge cannons that come on the IL-20 are just absolutely devastating. But these guns, they do all right, just like the 329's guns do all right. Not sure what aircraft took out that site. I'm willing to bet it's the friendly bomber up above us. I'm trying to help out Legion here by putting a few rounds in these aircraft that are chasing after him. He took out part of that ground site, but it's always important to try and finish off an entire ground site, because then you get the capture points for it, and it's worth a lot more at the end for you to be able to lock in those personal points. There's the player in the F4U4, and did you see how much damage was knocked off of this guy's hit point pool just by the tail gunner alone from Legion's NC-1070? That's pretty significant. And look at it, he's still firing away those huge cannons. I'm going to go ahead and drop my bombs here, at least a couple of them. 2 should be enough for this section. 2 bombs, if you think about it this way, if you've ever flown a 329 or even a 265, 2 bombs from this aircraft are going to be equivalent to a single bomb coming out of that aircraft. I mean, granted, it's a little bit more from this aircraft for overall damage, but the blast radius is slightly less. So if you think about the bombs in that way, then you'll know how much you should be spending in order to try and get some of these sites, depending on how much damage you get initially on the run-in for that section. Now, lucky for us, the enemy ended up capturing the airfield, which is what I was hoping for, because it's given us a little bit more time. Because if we just got air supremacy, I wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now, which is getting a couple assists here and there. And now it looks like that Corsair is coming back in, and he totally wants to get a piece of Legion. So I'm going to go ahead and get my guns on target, get a few hits here, and I'm willing to bet Legion's going to get his tail gunner on. You can see that tail gunner is doing a ton of damage to him right now. I only hit him a couple times with my cannons, but I'm sure Legion would have been able to finish him off there. This is going to be a much more impressive score than what we had on the last match when we got air supremacy. Let's go to the hangar and talk a little bit more about this airframe and how we performed. Alright, so here we are at the end results screen. We don't have the same impressive myriad of medals to the right of our grade here, but we did secure the victory, and we did in a relatively decent time frame, and we complemented one another very nicely. We were able to pump out quite a bit of damage, while I did far less damage to ground targets here, and I took out half of the ground targets. We did take out another aerial target here, and we were able to secure the victory again relatively quickly. The last match we had, I think I had 6,000 and Legion had 3,000. Again, air supremacy just finishes the match way too quick. Maybe we're playing at the wrong time of night as well, but I do feel like if you're having trouble with the NC 1070, working with somebody can help as well, but also making sure that you're isolating and taking out those key structures right away. Don't ever just damage a site and then leave it alone unless it's an air defense site. I usually try to take out air defense site guns if I can to help my teammates, but for like that garrison, there was that main garrison facility, there's those 10 facilities. Take out every structure you can. You can slow this thing down to 80 miles an hour and you can keep it airborne. So keep those guns firing, keep them singing on the proper targets, and if you're having trouble getting it before you pass over it, that's what the bombs are for. Just do a quick mental calculus as to whether or not you need 1, 2, 3, or 4 bombs on that target, because maybe you had a bad run on it, but by doing that you're going to have the best effect. And then also, don't be in a hurry to get anywhere if you're flying this thing by yourself. If you're flying this thing by yourself, you're of no use to anybody if you don't have some type of an air-to-ground ordnance, because if you don't have air-to-ground ordnance, you're not going to be able to take out any of the hardened structures. And you have a much longer reload time compared to what you would have with like a 329. Because it's 120-second reload time, and I did the math. I was actually running a stopwatch concurrently, and it takes about 40 to 50 seconds to go between zones. So if you got 120-second reload time, you're getting there way too quick. So take your time, let yourself loiter for a minute, build up your boost pool, let your bombs get close, and when you're getting close enough that your bombs will be up by the time you get to the zone, like, oh, there's 30 seconds left on the reload, I should have my bombs back by the time I get there. You can go ahead and start beelining it there, and I think you'll find that you have better success. In the meantime, you can defend against ground attackers that are coming into the zone, because again, you can kick those guns up and really put some hurt out. Anyways, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a little bit more insight as to how the NC 1070 works. It is a pretty robust platform, but it does definitely benefit from having an increased fire chance, which is an optional role on the gas operated action and the improved gyroscopic sight, which is exactly what I've done here. The other nice thing is you immediately get the option of putting on an outboard weapon piece of equipment, and you can also put on the consumable for increasing the blast radius to give you just a little bit more, or sorry, increased damage from the bombs and rockets to give you just a little bit more on these. Now, like I said, we're looking at about 22,400 space damage, but when you go ahead and throw that consumable on, you're getting over 24,000, and then we include demo expert on the pilot, and you're looking at 26,880 damage. That's a lot of damage coming out of this platform, and that's just with the bombs. The cannons are very strong and definitely are going to put you over the edge when it comes to being able to take out some of those lighter structures, and then the bombs are just there to augment the output. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.
I keep on moving forward, always getting closer. I'm marching till it's over.